Now, I'm afraid I can't really see any of you, so if you're all grimacing horribly while I'm speaking, there's nothing I can do about it. Debbie, it's so wonderful to have an opportunity to talk to you about Google and its approach to AI and what you think is the way it can boost individual businesses, but also the economy. I'm going to mostly ask you about companies, but before I do that, can you characterize briefly Google's approach to AI and how it maybe differs from other companies or organizations? How do you think about it?
Yes, I'd be delighted to do that. Obviously today we're hearing a lot about the profound nature of AI and sort of the change that it's going to bring to the world. We really do believe it's the most profound technology any of us are working on today. And as a result of its potential to help with everything from the extraordinary to the everyday, we really see it behooves us to take a really bold approach to bringing forward the societal benefits as well as the economic benefits. But with a technology that's as powerful, we also think it's important to be responsible. And so we have a real commitment to responsibility and to rolling out these technologies responsibly, which I'm happy to go into in a little bit more detail. And I think the last thing I would say about Google's approach is we very much think this can't be something that we do alone. We have to do it together with many people in the ecosystem, with government, with civil society, with academic institutions. And so we're really kind of combining all of this to, I would say, have an approach that's bold, responsible, and together with lots of other parties.
So unpack that a little bit more for me. What's an example of a decision Google has made that you think exemplifies that combination of boldness, responsibility, collective endeavor?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to being bold, because there are these incredible scientific breakthroughs that are enabled by AI, from climate science and kind of impacting sort of climate to medical kind of discovery, we really think it's important to be out there leading the way. And so I think of a project like AlphaFold, which was developed by the team at Google DeepMind, where it used to take an entire PhD candidacy to discover the structure of one protein, which is, you know, the fundamental building blocks of life. And basically, in under a year, they had taken a field that had discovered maybe 150,000 protein models to 200 million protein models, basically all the proteins that are known to man. And what that's enabled is now basically every biologist and chemist lab around the world is now using AlphaFold technology. And it's really accelerated the pace of scientific discovery. And you can imagine there'll be solutions that are discovered around things like plastic-eating enzymes or malarial-resistant drugs or some of these things that are going to cause huge breakthroughs, I think, and benefit all of us. So we want to make sure we're bringing those bold opportunities forward.
And actually get them out there.
And get them out there so that they can be of use and find discoveries that will help all of us. I think on the responsibility side, we understand there is an incredible responsibility we have around bringing this forward in a way that benefits humanity. And we developed something we call our AI principles back in 2018, and they really govern the way we bring things to the world. And it actually has caused us to be really thoughtful about some of the capabilities we brought to bear. So one example is we developed a lip reading capability, which would have been incredible and is incredible for people who have challenges with hearing. But before we actually launched our research paper that actually brought that to the world, we made sure to think about what are the sort of potential downside scenarios of people being able to interpret what someone else is saying without your permission. And so we did a lot of research with a whole variety of experts in this space, and then eventually brought a research paper forward that what we felt brought the technology forward for everyone responsibly. So those are sort of some examples of sort of bringing forward extraordinary benefits, but also making sure that we're responsible in how that's deployed.
So I want to focus most of our conversation on businesses and companies. And one thing I hadn't realized until I talked to you backstage was how much of your time you spend with people who are using Google's AI-enabled products or products more generally. If you think about the last year and all the different kinds of companies, large and small, that you've worked with, what do you think the ones who are getting it most right or most exciting doing, and what should other companies learn from them?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say on that is that, you know, I shared in what I said at the front, is that AI is going to be this profound technology. It's going to bring forward extraordinary opportunities, societal benefit, amazing. But it also lives in the everyday. It also lives in the way that kind of, we have 15 products that each reach 500 million people every single day. We have 6 products that each reach people 2 billion times a day. So think Gmail and Maps and Search and YouTube. And each of them is actually underpinned by AI and made better and more useful and more helpful to people. And I think about that as the same application when I talk to businesses. So I've been in this role about 18 months, and when I first came back to the UK to do this role, a lot of the conversation I would have with business leaders was, wow, AI, I need an AI strategy. And I'd say that the evolution over the last 18 months has really gone from the wow to the how. And what I mean by that is people understanding that I don't need an AI strategy. What I need is, how do I understand how AI can be an accelerant for my business strategy? And the reason I connect that to what we're doing at Google is that at Google, we understand we have these incredible products that actually touch billions of people around the world every single day, and how we infuse AI to make each of those products more useful. The fact that 15% of search queries every single day have never been seen before. And that's been true for decades, which is incredible to me and speaks to the fact that human curiosity is endless. And so what AI now enables is, you can take your phone and you can take a picture of these plants and understand, where could I buy one? How should I water it? What kind of light does it need? And so Lens as an interface and this idea of multimodality and the fact that AI is really enabling people to ask questions in new ways is what's reinventing all of our products. So our commitment on search is to help organize the world's information and make it universally useful and accessible. Similarly, what I would ask a business leader is, what is your business strategy? What are you actually out here to accomplish? What are the drivers of your revenue? What are the drivers of expenses? How do you take a capability like AI, which is really general purpose, and apply it in a useful way to accomplish those goals?
And are there any companies or organizations you think really exemplify that, other than Google? But are there any organizations you've seen that have really understood what their fundamental business is about and then incorporated AI in an intelligent way into that?
Yes, absolutely. I would say what I see as the two use cases that are sort of breakout use cases most commonly. One is around how to drive growth and try to find new markets and new consumer segments. And the other is actually about how to drive more expenses and productivity out of the business. And I would say the two use cases that I see working best. On the growth side, reacting to what I just described on search, for example, where consumers are finding new ways to ask questions. There used to be this historical mindset of, if I was going to do a search campaign, for example, I would have a fixed set of keywords, millions potentially of keywords, and I would say, I expect that this is how a consumer is going to ask these questions. I think the businesses that recognize they can't possibly interpret with a person all the different ways that someone's going to ask a question about this beautiful plant sitting on stage, but actually allows the machine and the artificial intelligence to say, I have a business which is in providing plants, and I'm actually going to make sure that all the different ways someone asks for, what is that? About 2 foot high green plant that sits in a basket.
I'm loving that the plant is providing so much inspiration.
Thank you so much, whoever put the plants here to provide that interactive device. But understanding all the different ways, allowing the computer basically and the artificial intelligence to understand all those ways, that is the best use case that I see. And so, as opposed to people getting in their own way of anticipating what they think is the answer, allowing artificial intelligence to open their mind and be more creative and expansive. So that is sort of one example on finding new markets, finding new opportunities that were not known to the individual before. On the kind of productivity side, one of the use cases that's really taking off is contact center use cases in customer service centers. And so what's interesting about that, I'm finding, is that a lot of people have walked into that space as a cost-saving exercise. And often they are able to save cost. But what has been a surprise and delight, I think, for many of our customers who have worked with us in the contact center space, has been actually an improvement in customer satisfaction. So all those people who actually are now interfacing with an AI agent to actually get their basic query answered faster and with more satisfaction is a great outcome, and also allows those businesses to take their customer service agents and put them on harder to solve, harder to crack, more strategic challenges.
And presumably that takes some bravery from the companies. They can't have been sure in advance that that was going to be true.
Absolutely. And I think many of them went in with more of a cost-saving mentality and actually ended up finding there were huge benefits they could get on consumer satisfaction as well as redeployment of their resources to higher value tasks.
So I think what you're saying in terms of marketing and finding new markets and consumer satisfaction is very interesting, because when we've done lots of focus groups with very small business owners, hairdressers in a shop, they're often quite skeptical of technology, but the one thing they do recognize is their need to reach people. And when we've sized the opportunity of AI, we sized it for you guys, 400 billion by 2030, it was very much a potential number, right? It was reliant on not only very big companies, but very small companies to actually take up that opportunity. Where, if anywhere, do you see barriers to that take-up? Because presumably, you're speaking to companies that are grabbing this and see Google as the way in which they grab this, but you're also seeing a very long tail of people who are not yet.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, my commitment in my role is really to bring forward the AI opportunity for everyone in the UK. And that includes businesses very much of large and small variety, government, but it really is about everyone. And so for me, one of my big agenda areas is skills and making sure that everyone has the skills to benefit from what's going to be going on in this big transition. The conversation around AI and jobs, I think can create fear for some. And I think we've done some research together actually around the space of what is AI going to mean for jobs? And what we typically find is that about 2/3 of jobs we think are going to be fundamentally enhanced by AI. I was talking about AI being kind of this general purpose technology that can do lots of things.
Yep.
And I think when you think about different kinds of tasks that people are doing that are administrative, they actually span many, many, many different kinds of roles. So think about teachers developing lesson plans. Think about small business owners having to organize a schedule for their staff. Think about even people on a construction site and the work they're doing to organize staff to be in the right places at the right time. I think there are a lot of surprising use cases, and I think the other thing I would say about jobs is in addition to 2/3 of roles being enhanced by AI, there's a whole category of jobs that are going to be created in the future that we can't even imagine today. You think about the transition that we've all been on over the last century, where people went from mostly being agriculture and now people working in cities, and you have people that are hairdressers and hedge fund managers, and those weren't roles that basically existed
And there's
back
no
in the day.
typing pool anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's hard for us to imagine what those new jobs are going to be, but we certainly believe there'll be a new category. So my kind of commitment is to making sure that everyone in the country can benefit. This is across all regions. It's across all different lines of difference. Some of the research that concerns me most is when you look at people doing the same tasks, the variance in terms of people using AI tools is really vast. So women, well, not just geographically, you see women, people with less education, and people who are older, generally, for the same task, are not using the AI tool. So I want to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to using these tools. It'll make them, I think, not only more productive in the work they do, but have a better experience doing it.
So let's use teachers as a bit more of an example, because I've spent a lot of time working in schools. And schools seem to me a really good example of what you're talking about, because it has the bottom-up nature of AI, in that you've got new teachers turning up and they're probably just using it, whether the school wants them to or not. They are using it to help them generate lesson plans. But you also have lots of people who've been teaching for decades, and we know that in the public sector there's been a lot of problem generally with adoption of technology in schools, even more so potentially in the NHS. You are doing this AI Works program to try and figure out whether you can really get adoption up. Tell me a bit about your approach there and what you think you might find.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this program, AI Works. I think it's fairly brave of us, if I may say. There's been a lot of this academic research around what is the impact of AI going to be on jobs. What we decided to do is go further than doing an academic paper, but actually get out into the workforce and actually do some interventions with specific people doing jobs in their day-to-day and figure out how can we actually have AI be an accelerant to your work. And through that work, we identified sort of 3 sectors we're working in. We're working with some small businesses through Enterprise Nation. We're working with a number of schools, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. And we're working with a union, which is
a trade union.
A trade union, which is a pretty surprising kind of, I think, for some people, that has been a really interesting collaboration. We now have about 1,200 people that we're going to be putting through different kinds of training experiences, really going after some of the barriers that we're anticipating to them using these AI kind of tools in their work. So when it comes to teachers, one of the things that we found in our research was they were concerned about the accuracy of the information that they might be able to find in a lesson plan. And so we're helping them actually in these interventions to say, how can I use these AI tools in a way that gets me accurate information? How can I validate kind of the information that's coming back? And we're pretty excited. I mean, it's early days, obviously. One of the things I'm most excited about this pilot is that in these kind of experiments we've designed, which is very much what I would encourage businesses to do as well, is design these experiments with a clear test, learn, scale mentality, where we're going to try some things, we're going to learn some stuff, and then if we learn things that actually help us identify something that works, let's go scale it. I think the scaling piece is where it's really not down to Google. We really want to be partnered with government, with other businesses out there to actually make sure we're getting best practices scaled into the market. I think likely we will not find 100% of the experiments will work, but I think if we can find some that do and that actually can get scale, it will help us deliver on this opportunity for everyone.
But I think it's interesting. It is a fundamentally different approach than government quite often takes. My first ever job out of university was assessing a big skills program Gordon Brown had spent God knows how much money on, and it fundamentally failed, right? He did it at scale. It was a literacy and numeracy adult program, and it didn't work. So trying to figure out first, what are the barriers? Can it work? And then figuring out how to scale it seems smart, assuming, of course, that government is listening. And I suppose one thing that strikes me from this conversation, which is different from many I have, is government hasn't really come up so far, right? It's been Google figuring out how to save the world, and Google working with clients or companies who are themselves trying to figure things out and talking to workers. When I was in Downing Street, we were always hubristic about our own role in driving technology. Now I've been out for a while, I see government more as potentially getting in the way as much as driving it. What do you see as government's role, and what are the most critical decisions that you think our government needs to make, other than scaling your AI Works program, in the next few years to make sure that everyone can realize this potential?
Yeah, I think government has a critical role to play. I think the UK has incredible foundational capabilities to take advantage of this moment. I think we have a long history in technological leadership and innovation, creative industries, our academic institutions. But I don't think the AI opportunity will be unlocked by accident. And we think that it's going to take sort of proactive, strategic intervention from the government. We recently issued an AI opportunity paper. We've highlighted sort of 3 things that we think the government should be doing. The first is enabling infrastructure. We can talk about kind of each of these if you want more detail. The second is around skills and the skills agenda, which I shared a little bit about kind of the work we're doing, but clearly needs to be scaled through government. And the last is really about adoption of AI, I would say, in our public services, which relates to teachers, but also kind of, I would say, the NHS and things in the health system and other areas as well. I would say that we are, keenly awaiting Matt Clifford's kind of report on what he is going to be recommending the government do, and we are, cautiously optimistic that we'll be moving forward in a good direction. It's obviously early days of the new government, but cautiously looking forward to making progress together.
And are there other governments that you think are either leading the way or are models we should not replicate? What are you seeing in the rest of the world?
Yeah, so my focus obviously is on the UK, but I talk to my colleagues around the world kind of regularly, and I'd say that this conversation about data centers, where data centers are getting built.
Which is partly what you mean by infrastructure.
Very much about infrastructure. I think one of the big drivers of that is, energy costs and, how energy costs and also clean energy availability, I think, are big drivers of many people's decisions about where to place data centers. That's like one example. I would say around skills, this whole topic of having a national skills agenda. I think that Skills England is a great vehicle potentially for that, to actually bring the right skills forward and having this idea of skills needs to be lifelong learning. If this was easier to see in the audience, I would ask people how many people are actually using AI in their daily lives.
You know what, let's have a go.
But
I think we can just about see you. How many people are used AI this morning?
I think, I don't know, it's hard to know how many people are.
I would say that's at least 70%.
Yeah, and so I do think, a lot of times people talk about what's happening in primary school education around computer science and STEM, and I think that is important. I think that this notion of lifelong learning and the fact that we all need to be lifelong learners, including, myself and you, and I know some of the work you do now is using AI and tools in your own research. I think it's really critical. And so this idea of a national skills service where that's put forward, I think is important. And then on the public services, I think we have done some things with the Office of National Statistics that are starting to use AI tools to actually help them cut and decipher data sets in really interesting ways. But I think that is really just skimming the surface. I mean, if you think about 700,000 hours of administrative tasks that are done by teachers and GPs every single year.
All of which they loathe.
I mean, all of which they loathe. And by the way, they should be spending that time in the surgery with patients, in the classroom with kids, or adult learners or whomever. That's really where the value add happens, not in the administrative duties. And so I think AI, generative AI in particular, is perfectly placed to help unlock that, and we'd really love to see the government doing more in that area.
Right, I think I promised faithfully I would finish us on time, so I'm going to ask you one final question before we finish up. most people here are, I think, from business. You've already hinted at this, but what is your one piece of advice for them to take away from everything you've seen at Google in the last 18 months?
Yeah, my big piece of advice is identify, as leaders in particular, what are your drivers of revenue and what are your drivers of expense, and figure out how AI can actually go after each of those, because I do think there are fundamental ways that you can use the tools that are available today. This is not about waiting for some transformative moment in the future where AI is going to be this new strategy. There could be some businesses here that actually come up with, a next generation app or something that's developed off the back of a new capability, but I think AI can actually be applied today in very practical ways to businesses to help them drive more success in whatever they're committed to.
And I think from our conversation, this is interesting. AI is a transformative technology, but businesses are still businesses, and people are still people.
That's right.
Debbie, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Rachel.
That was fascinating. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't see the audience, but thank you for a show
Thanks
of
so much.
hands.
Brilliant, wonderful. Thank you both so much. Thank you very much indeed. Debbie Weinstein and Rachel Wolf. Thank you.